So webinar number 10. So at Elevate, we work with people that are 5 to 6 years away or already in their work optional lifestyle. And those people have very specific investment strategies that they need to use. And they have very specific wants with their investments. And that's kind of what we specialize in. That's the investment side. The financial planning side, which we deal with the playbook, a lot of the concerns that our clients have, our people have, is around estate planning. And if you're a regular follower of these webinar series, you'll notice this is probably the third time we've addressed estate planning in our webinar series out of 10. So it's gotten a big chunk of our attention. And there's a reason why our clients are concerned about it. They're concerned because their parents maybe haven't done it or are going through it, or they're going through it, or they're worried about their kids or their beneficiaries. So we spent a lot of time thinking about it. And the reason I wanted to bring it up one more time is I think Amy Pickard is going to bring a fresh perspective and a different perspective than we've seen thus far in our conversations about estate planning. So I'm excited to have her on. I think it's going to be fun. I think you're going to walk away feeling inspired. That old saying, death and taxes are the only certainties. I don't know. I don't know if that's as much of a certainty as death. I mean, death is inevitable. We're all going to have to deal with it at some point. And I wonder if there's a better method. And I think Amy's going to enlighten us a little bit on that. So I am going to bring her on.
Oh, awesome. How's it going, Ben?
Hey, Amy, it is going good. Good to see you again. Thank you.
Yes.
And thanks for doing this tonight.
Oh, my pleasure.
So I was just thinking about how to tee this up. And, the first thing I thought about is that you're down in LA and I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself, but that quote about being the one of the top 5 people in the death business in LA just stands out for a bunch of reasons. So can you tell us a little bit about how you came about that title and what it means?
Sure. I mean, I think what it means is it's just there are more, opportunities for people to get into the death positive community or business. And, we're just trying to change the cultural narrative on how we view death preparedness and dying, and the aftermath. And so just because I created my company, which I'll tell you about in a sec, but because I created my company Good to Go, and it has such a kind of different take on the usual, gloom and doom, stuffy, wear a tie kind of estate planning, I think that's why it caught their attention. Also, aging is illegal in Los Angeles. And so people not only do not want to talk about aging, they definitely don't want to talk about dying. But for some reason, I feel like I've been chosen to do that. So basically my story is I have been a freelance producer, director, broadcaster, my whole life since I was 15, growing up in Dayton, Ohio, working on public access TV. And I was just living my happy bohemian life as a freelancer in Los Angeles. And I was working for Getty Images, interviewing, A-list celebrities on red carpets, interviewing A-list celebrities at junkets. And then suddenly in 2012, my mom died. Just out of the blue, unexpectedly, and she did not leave any kind of advanced planning behind. And it was a nightmare. It was overwhelming. It was not only traumatizing having to deal with my best friend and my cheerleader, and when your DNA leaves the planet, it's an intense thing, and so not only was I trying to figure out what is death, what is grief, and all of these things, I had to fly to Chicago where she lived. I had to get into her condominium, and I literally was like, what is the name of the electric company in Chicago? Because I need to make sure there's power while I'm trying to figure out stuff and look for stuff. And when's the last time she paid her bills and things like this. And so I suddenly realized I was not equipped with the information that I needed or should have had in place with my mom. And so I just decided, with my producer spirit, you know what? I am going to try to make, people listen and try to help prevent them from going through the nightmare of death duties that I went through, and I took a year out and just wrote down every single weird question that came up, and also just added in a bunch of stuff that I think people should know that not a lot of people know. And so I put that in a booklet called The Departure File, which is different from your playbook, because one of the reasons I love your playbook book is because it really dives deep into the financial, into the insurance, all the kind of logistic stuff that have nothing to do with me. I mean, I tell people I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer, I'm just a person that's lived through grief, and I know the nightmare. And I
pick up a copy on Amazon. There you go. Good plug.
No problem. And my departure file is more about the everyday logistics, and also it's a history of your bills and what you want for your funeral and things like that. But it's also a history of your joy, and it addresses things that people don't think about. And I joke, it's really hard to run a business that provides people with the peace that they don't know they're going to need in the future. Yeah. But anyway, that's how I created Good to Go. And I basically tried to, get across this information, but in a lighter way. And so I decided to have Good to Go parties. And I play a Good to Go death playlist, like Another One Bites the Dust, Stairway to Heaven, Highway to Hell, all these kind of fun songs in the background. And then I have everybody bring a potluck dish to share based on a recipe of their loved one, because I always feel, close to my mom when I make her recipes. And then we just go through the departure file and we talk about their fears, their concerns, and but we do it with a sense of humor and a little lighter touch.
So that is interesting. One of the things that you said that, kind of sparked my interest. One of the things is about the cable bill or the utilities. And I had this thought, I was thinking about estate planning, and a lot of us, especially as financial types, tend to come at it from the legal aspect. We're like, okay, we got to get that trust or the will or the POA, all that stuff's got to be in place. And we do that, and we go out and we hire an attorney to draft the stuff, because that's who does that stuff, right? We get good attorneys to do this stuff because they're very knowledgeable about it. But those things, even when we get them in place, it doesn't deal with the cable bill. It doesn't, like, I've never read a trust or a will that says, oh, by the way, you're going to have to contact Xfinity and downgrade my package, right? I mean, it doesn't happen. So I always think about like the value proposition that people have. And I feel like the strong value proposition that you have is there's this kind of this area that isn't really addressed that should be. Like, nobody ever really teaches us how to financially die. It's just like there's no course out there for it. So like, I mean, how do we figure this stuff out? And you've kind of gone through this experience. You went through it with your mom, and then and then you talk a little bit about your dad. And I got a picture of your dad here.
Oh, I love my dad. Yeah, I mean, basically my mom died. They divorced when I was a little kid. So my mom died in 2012. And then because of my mom's death, I was then the POA of my granny, which was her mom. And then I was immersed in elder care for a year, a nightmare of elder care. And as we all know, what a joy that is. And then my granny died. And then a year and a half later, my dad died. But the difference being, I didn't have Good to Go created when I went through, the years with my mom and my granny. And my mom's estate took about 2 years to close. My granny's estate took about 2 years to close. And then I created Good to Go. My dad actually came to a party, and it was a year before he died. Obviously, neither of us knew he was going to die. So he came to a party, and then when he was suddenly struck ill with like a bronchitis or something, he was immediately, transferred to the ICU, and it just all happened so quick, and but because he had come to a Good to Go party, I was rock solid on everything that he wanted done or not done as far as his care goes, because we had talked about it. We kept the conversation going. It's not just a one-time thing, one and done. And so my memory was just was rote memory. When you're in an emergency and you're in that chaos of illness, you're not thinking straight, but for some reason, I just instantly reflected on the conversations that my dad and I had. And I said to him, I said, that everything is taken care of, right? Like we're good, so, if you want to fight this thing, we're with you. But if you're tired, that's okay too. We are good, and that gave him a lot of peace, and that really surprised me because I basically made the departure file for grieving people to make their grief easier, but I never thought of the person that's filling it out, that it's going to give them the peace that they know they're not leaving a mess behind, And so it's just so important to have the kind of everyday conversations and, where's the phone bill? And, and that's the kind of thing that's in the departure file. It's like, what time of the month do you, pay for your bills? So if my dad died on, the 20th, if I went to his departure file and saw that he filled it out a year previous or whatever, I would know, so it's just a kind of cosmic instruction manual that's, I'm trying to. And then I posted that on my website. It's so true. I'm so fun at parties.
I love this picture. It's great when you sent it to me and I'm like, oh, that kind of describes what we're doing here tonight is, we're taking a subject that, it's scary and we don't necessarily like to talk about it. Right. And then there's you, right, running around with a trumpet, playing loudly death backs. So it's a great visual because this is an uncomfortable subject and it's scary, and I wonder if the reason that it's scary for a lot of people is because, some people don't have that certainty of where they're going to go or what's going to happen. And even that aside, it's like, because we've pushed it off for so long and we don't talk about it and we don't deal with it. It becomes that, even scarier thing out there. And so I think this conversation is really healthy for a lot of people to have, just because we can embrace it rather than ignore it. Your deliverable, and I think you call it the departure file. And again, remind me why you call that the departure file. I think about traveling or something, or suitcase.
Yeah, I always kind of think of good to go as kind of a cosmic travel agent. Like, we've been close to the edge of awakening, i.e. grieving a loved one. And so we're on the precipice and we've been there and now we're reporting back, and we're giving you your ticket to peace, basically. And so I just thought departure file was cute. It was kind of like a travel kind of vibe. And, I am preparing you for your ultimate trip, and I do want to say that even though I do have a sense of humor and, a kind of upbeat personality, I'm not saying that death is super fun. I'm not saying that when you're grieving, you're not feeling the deepest cosmic pain. It's been almost 10 years since my mom died, 9 since my granny died, and 8 since my dad died. And it still feels like yesterday, so it's really hard. But what I'm saying is death is also part of life. And as you're saying, we avoid it. We don't want to talk about it. But guess what? It still happens. It's gonna happen. Yeah. And I say that, no matter how many green smoothies or how many 5K walks you sign up for, you're still going to die.
And so what happens, like, typically if somebody just doesn't want to address this issue and kind of ignores it? Doesn't that kind of compound things when we finally face the inevitable? It makes it worse, I would imagine.
It makes it so much worse. And that's the thing. When my dad was in the ICU and he was intubated and really, found it incredibly difficult to communicate, all I could think of was the gratitude that we took care of all the logistics. And I know that when his bills needed paying, because obviously when he was in the hospital, I didn't think he was going to die 6 days later. I just was like, okay, well, he's going to be serious, in serious, critical condition. Let's see how we're supposed to play this out, and what do I need to do? And it provided the space, that the mental space and the mental energy that I needed to focus I'm going to get emotional, Ben, to focus on what's important, which is love,
Yeah.
you know, and that's
Yeah.
it. And so instead of saying, Dad, where's the car title? Can you spell it? Can you point, you know, or whatever it was? Hey, I love you. You love me. And I know it. You know, I love you and you know it. And that's all that matters. And I was able to say to my dad that the privilege of a lifetime has been being your daughter.
Amy, that is so powerful and so good to hear. I mean, it's a great, kind of tribute to what you're doing. Cause you're taking all the problems or many of the problems and dealing with them ahead of time. So you can have that moment of, to help with the transition. I'm just going to switch gears a little bit and pull up a couple pictures that, we've collected. And being down in LA, I visit there because, with kids in Disneyland, it's hand in hand. But do you just run into celebrities all the time going out for coffee and like on the street? And
it's so funny. Everybody's like, do you see Brad Pitt? I was just like, no, but I will say that I've lived here for 20 years now. So I have seen a few celebrities here and there, but it just, because I think I'm from Ohio, I think it's just like, oh yeah, look at the guy that looks like Bon Jovi getting a Starbucks. Oh, wait, that is Bon Jovi. You're just like, oh. And so, I work in the entertainment business and I joke that I went from VIP to RIP because I'm in the death business now. But that's a picture of when I met Sting because I ran a music video show back in Ohio. So I've worked for VH1. I've interviewed a lot of, rockers. I'm a big music fan. So that's my background. And oh, there's Bono. Hey, right in the snuggle nook. I love Bono.
Who meets Bono? I mean, come on. And who is this?
That's me interviewing Bryce Howard on the red carpet. It was for some sort of an environmental awards.
This is what LA is like. And then finally, Elvis Costello, of course.
Who's the best.
He is the best. And then I just want to give you a quick kudos too. And, as I thank you for being here again. Thank you for taking the time to do this. I think you're a treasure. But you've done so much work collectively on the other side too. One of the things you had produced something that's on Amazon Prime now, which is super cool. Glenn Tilbrook. So, that's a good thing for us to look up and watch. I saw the
you're a big Squeeze fan. Yeah. Remember Squeeze from the 80s?
I was, but the preview was awesome and I'm going to watch it. So hopefully,
I love it. Yeah. I did that movie 20 years ago and then, I'm in a different business. And then suddenly, they're like, oh, do you want to put that movie that you made 20 years ago up for streaming? I'm like, sure. Why not?
Isn't that funny? And congratulations on that. So
thank you. Thank you.
Kind of getting back to your deliverable, the departure file, I think a lot of people would be interested in taking a look at that. I think you charge way too little for, what you do and the value that it provides. But I know that they can get that on your website, which is goodtogopeace.org.
That's right.
Goodtogopeace.org. And I'll put a little link in the description here when we have this published. But also you had mentioned very generously that you'd throw a discount code in there for anybody watching this webinar. I think it was Elevate 10.
Yeah. It's if you go to my website and you go to order a departure file, you do the drop down PayPal menu, and then you'll see Elevate 10% off. And so just click on that. And then all your webinar peeps can get a little discount.
That is very generous of you. So thank you. So I'm going to do a Q&A. So there's a couple questions that have come in. So we'll see what happens. We'll field this. First question, how do you differ from an estate planner?
I differ from an estate planner in that I don't cover a living will or anything that an estate planner along with an estate attorney would do. So the departure file isn't considered a legal document. It should just be considered verbally binding, and it's just kind of a guidepost and an instruction manual for your people. So I don't think it's as official as an estate planner, whereas I'm just someone who has lived through cumulative grief of my entire family died within a short span of 4 years. And so I had to clean out 3 homes and I had to deal with the death duties for 3 people. And I just put all of that everyday experience, like into the departure file, like email passwords. I mean, I could not figure out my mom's passwords. And so then I couldn't get into her accounts to cancel the bills. And it's so much easier online and all these things, And so that's how I think I differ with an estate planner. I kind of cover more your everyday logistics, and then also kind of a spiritual life after death legacy, like what kind of, how do you want to be remembered, and what are your thoughts on death, and what things helped you through grief in your lifetime. So it's all these things that'll just provide comfort for your loved ones left behind, especially if it's in your own handwriting. But I know how hard it is, Ben, and you know how hard it is. And I always say, why do we put more effort into building our own burrito than we do building a plan for our loved ones, the people we love the most? We know their pizza toppings when we order a pizza for them. And, we know their favorite foods and all the things that all the planners of the families know about the people in their unit. But do you know if they want a headstone? Do you know if they want to be cremated? Do you know if they want to be buried? What kind of funeral or life celebration do they want? Do they want people wearing something fun to their life celebration or whatever, So I kind of feel like I'm here to let people know that I want to empower people to let them know that they can have control over the end to a certain extent,
To a certain extent. And that's part of what advanced planning is about, I presume, right? It's about, making plans or preparations to kind of smooth that transition from the financial side, the paperwork side. And again, getting back to like it does estate planning, wills, trusts, that kind of stuff doesn't handle the cable bill. So all those details that traditional planning doesn't necessarily cover, advanced planning might. Another question just popped up, an example of, what is the worst thing that you've ever seen with people being ill prepared?
Well, I mean, my own personal story, I was taken to court by estranged relatives. So, but I have heard horror stories, families split apart, siblings estranged from each other. And that's another reason. I mean, when my dad read the departure file and came to the good to go party, he called me the next day and he said, none of the stuff that you went through would have happened if you would have had good to go. And I was like, Dad, that's why I created the business. It's like, that's not a coincidence. So I think it's just the worst thing I've seen besides families being torn apart was just the anguish and then the trauma of the not knowing if what you did was what the deceased loved one wanted, and this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to transmute that energy of uncertainty and what do we do and chaos to, oh, we've got the plan in place. Let's just focus on the love and what's going down,
And so probably pre-COVID where you're doing good to go parties. I mean, there's potential for a lot of, person to person. Are you doing Zoom good to go parties now? Is that?
Yeah, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we can't gather in person, which is my favorite thing to do because I'm such a people person. But yeah, I do offer them, the good to go parties virtually. They're not quite as fun, as the in-person ones would be with the soundtrack on and things like that. But yeah, and I say that now is the time to do it when you're young and healthy, because if you ask yourself, and anyone who's watching this right now, I would love for them to ask themselves, okay, when is the perfect time to complete all of your advanced planning and to get the life insurance in place and all those things? And then, that's a big question. So then I would say, is it when you think you have a health scare and have to go to the doctor and then you're diagnosed with something? Is it then? Because that's going to be awkward. Hey, everybody, I've got a serious illness. I've got to do my advanced planning right now. And so it's just like, no, you got to do it now while we can talk about it. We can joke about it. It might be abstract, and so now is the time to do it. And to make sure that everybody's on the same page, you know.
So can you kind of describe what happens at a good to go party? Is it, filling the departure file out as a family or individuals?
Yeah, I mean, I've had some weird ones. I've had, a party of drag queens, I've had families, I've had coworkers, I've had bridesmaids together. So basically we have a party, everybody brings a potluck dish and some booze. And so we have drinks, because I always say, if you're going to talk about the hard stuff, you need to drink the hard stuff. And so we just loosen the vibe with food and drink and the rock and roll death soundtrack. And then we sit down and I go through the departure file with them. Now, it takes a couple hours to fill out, so we don't fill it out and it's not completed by the time you leave. But we go through and I explain why we have the stuff that we have in there and different circumstances, that came up just through my experience from talking to hospice workers and, things like that. So, one of the questions I put in the departure file, and a lot of people at the parties were like, whoa, was just, are you estranged from anybody right now? Because if something happened to you, would you want that person contacted? Or what if that person finds out that you're on your deathbed and they want to come visit? Is that cool with you? And so you've got to think kind of like you said, big picture. Yes, we drill down to all the little details, especially your playbook, because it covers all the stuff that mine doesn't. It's all financial and official, and this is the bank stuff that you need and all of that, whereas mine is kind of more everyday, situations, and any kind of way that I can help people communicate with their loved ones about what they want. That's why I do it.
Well, Amy, I want to thank you again. It's very helpful. I think what you do is tremendously valuable, and I'm glad you're doing it. And I thank you for doing what you do for the people that you do it for. So it has been fun.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
So thank you, everybody, for joining us. And we both look forward to hearing from you. Farewell.